Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. One of these times we're gonna be live. Sometime soon here. We're live. We're not live. We're back on. We're back off.
Maybe we're off.
If
There it
you're
is.
trying to tune into us, we're we don't know what's going on.
We're a couple amateurs amateuring it up here at Amateur Hour. That's what's going
Yep, that's exactly right. That is right.
on. Too
We're just recording a phone conversation. This isn't a production of any kind. That's for sure.
pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
All right, so
conversations 2 J's at night.
there you go. Yeah.
For now.
And I wouldn't want to stop them either. So that's
No.
for sure.
No. So anyway, welcome to another episode phone call with us. That's Jordan, typically known as your host. I'm Jeremy, and we were just chatting about. Well, we hadn't been chatting for very long before I realized that I didn't think we were on, but we were just talking about my lovely mustache and how it could play in with some of the mask madness and beards, how beards could act as filters. But anyway, that moment's kind of come and gone. I don't know that we'll riff on that again, but
can't revive that. No.
No, you had to be there, and you weren't there, so you lose.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was saying though that I took the beard off because it just once it starts getting warm. I was doing something outside the other day and I started sweating, and
Yeah.
I decided it's time to go. I just get way too hot with the full beard year round. But as long as stuff is going to stay weird, which it certainly looks like it is, at least for a little while longer, I'm going to lean into it and I'm going to wear my weird mustache. So you can either like it or love it. But anyway, so how was your week? What were you up to this week?
Oof. It was a good week. We've had decent weather. There was a couple nights when it froze and the ground sort of rehardened, and I had to wait for a few hours for the daylight to kind of soften things back up. But yeah, it was a good week. I got a lot of post-harvest stuff finished. Got my little greens bubbler completed, which so what that is it's like a little it's PVC that I've drilled a couple holes in it, and I just have like a section that comes across, makes like almost like a square, more of a rectangle, and then in the middle I have one more piece as well that kind of comes in. And
does this sit vertically or horizontally?
Horizontally.
Okay.
So it'll sit horizontally in like a tub that's like,
Gotcha.
Obviously that's going to be taller than it.
Yeah.
And I'll fill that tub up with water, and then that PVC thing has a bunch of little holes that I drilled into it, and it goes up and connects to an air blower that you would use for like a jacuzzi tub, right? To blow air bubbles into your jacuzzi.
Sure.
And so the idea basically is you fill up that tub, you dump all your salad mix, baby greens, so small leaf lettuce and things like that into that tub with the water. Click on your air blower and it bubbles and cycles and knocks off any dirt and grime, all that stuff off your veggies. And then you just take like a colander, something that has like some screen to it, and take off all the greens are gonna float. So you just take them off and you throw them onto a mesh, like a mesh screen with some fans over top to kind of dry them out.
Yeah.
Yep. So I got that tested. I got all the PVC connected, and I had to wire up the blower and did a little test run on it, and then looks good. Everything looks working. So
yeah. Well, you still have all your hair, it looks like, so you didn't get off with any electrocution or anything. So there's that.
Exactly.
Playing with electricity can be a daunting task. I mean, it's relatively simple when you really get down to it.
Yeah.
But it can be a scary task for sure. I mean, you're talking about nobody wants to get shocked, man.
No.
Don't taser me, bro.
Yeah.
Taser me, bro.
For sure.
Nobody wants to get shocked.
No, I've always found working with like circuits and things to be pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
I will say, even though I've gone through all the education of mechanical engineering, it's still kind of balancing the ideas of amperage and voltage, and sort of figuring out like uh, what capacity is needed, for instance, in like an outlet and all that sort of stuff. It gets I'm all confused all the time.
I don't understand any of it. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. When I said that it's relatively simple, I basically meant running wires and connecting them to things.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I don't
In the
fully
house
understand.
where you already know it's 120 volt,
Yeah,
15 amp,
or even
pretty steady.
even just yeah, even just wiring. Yeah, I guess it's mostly stuff in the house. But even if you're putting something together, I mean, for the most part, you kind of know what you need, and it's demarked on the one part, and then the battery or whatever you're going to power it with, what that is. you
Right.
know so there isn't so much trying to figure out what's going on. um
Yeah.
I don't know how to do any of that. Dad's really good with that stuff.
Yeah.
He did a lot of electrician work, so
Hmm. I
still
remember.
does. So
Yeah, I remember going with him to one of the homes that he was wiring,
yeah.
and just as I was really young, but I remember him just kind of, I think, babysitting me essentially. I was just running around like a little kid at
Yeah, yeah.
the time.
Well, I would do that too. I used to
Yeah.
do that too. A lot as a kid. I would go with him and be a gopher if he
Yeah.
needed a something a crimper or whatever from the van. I'd
Mm.
go grab that for him, or go grab him another spool of wire or whatever
Little
we were
wire,
doing.
solder
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I'm terrible with that stuff. I don't understand, I don't understand the difference between amps, volts, ohms. It makes stuff go, and that's about all I understand.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with it. I'm just terrible with it.
Yeah.
Turn it off before you start messing with it. That's what I know.
It's a can of worms, man. If you either have to, like, you can either sort of, like you said, know the cursory stuff, or you gotta like dive in, because it's
Yeah,
not an easy task, not an easy thing.
yeah, yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
Well,
so
that's
the
really cool.
blower went well, and then
Yeah,
I did a lot of stuff in the garden. So we got the rebar drove in.
nice.
Um, I was taking care of their apple and pears, trees, and things like that. So I did a lot of mulching this past
Hmm.
week also. Yeah,
Yeah, good deal.
things are
Good
moving
deal.
forward for sure.
Oh yeah, spring's starting to roll in. I'm
Oh yeah.
definitely making plans to move forward with stuff here. I got some mulching to do, and yeah, looking
How's
forward
your
to it.
garden
Excited
looking?
about it.
You getting gearing up for it here in
I'm
next
getting
couple
ready to pull the
weeks?
tarp off. Yeah, I was thinking I need to pull the tarp off and get the leaves blown out of it, and see how, before before winter set in, I'd put down compost and soil in there to try and rejuvenate stuff, and then I put the tarp over it, and we'll see what's going on. I My compost pile is interesting. It's still not. It's weird because it's not turning the way that I kind of thought that it would, maybe.
Mm,
But if I go and stick a shovel into it and start digging around and stuff, it really smells like dirt.
mm.
It smells really good. It smells really, really
Oh,
good.
that's good. Yeah.
So I figure that's a good sign. But it's still very leafy, and just not quite deteriorated as much as I kind of thought that it should
Might
be.
need. Hmm. So
I
it
don't
might
know.
need more leafy greens then. Might need some more
That's kind
green.
of what I was thinking, and I thought maybe too, just trying to inject some other dirt into it might help as well. If it has some worms and stuff in it already,
For
that
sure.
could
Yeah.
kind of help get into the pile and start turning stuff. So I have to do some digging, and I'm gonna have some dirt. And I actually
Yeah.
today, it was beautiful out. I got dismissed out of work early, so I was like, oh
Nice.
well, I'm gonna go and swing the mattock for a little bit today, I guess. And so I went up and swung the mattock, and I saw all kinds of worms in some of the dirt, and I was like, ooh, this this is exactly what I'm talking about. So I took a
Yeah.
couple shovelfuls over and dumped it in my compost pile and turned it up a little bit. But I figure ultimately, nature will just take its course with it.
Yeah.
It will turn into dirt. It's definitely not. I'm a little bit worried because some of it seems a little bit moldy way inside because it's very dusty. But I don't know if that's mold or if that's just dust from,
That's probably
you know, 'cause it's very
fungus.
dry.
That likely indicates a
Yeah.
fungus because if was it kind of white, a little bit like white, a little whitish.
The dust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Yeah. So definitely fungus. That usually indicates lack of oxygen. So you could either, if you turned it more, but you don't have to. It'll just break down slower, as you say. It'll break down. Just it'll go a little slower.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I looked up, how people make compost. And the one video that I watched, this guy actually really, really tends to his compost.
Yeah.
And I mean, he waters it and he's turning it like every single day. But it's also a much smaller thing than what I'm.
Oh, really?
Or not that I know what the hell I'm doing. I just kind of was like, oh, this is a good idea, and I started running with it. And so far, it's. I think it's gonna work. It's just gonna be a little bit different from what other people do.
Sure.
Because the other thing I can do too, which I did today a little bit, is if I dig under the pile.
Exactly.
Way down to the bottom, like to where it's bare earth before I started building that. It's all kinds of
beautiful,
dank
huh?
and
yeah,
it's real nice down there. So, and even like from the top, like there's layers to my pile that seem like pretty much ready that I could go ahead and use it. Like I said, it's a little bit leafy, but I think it'd be fine to use as compost. It's not soil, but over time that pile is going to start, turning into soil. I would think at least some of it.
Yeah, and if you put that in the garden, it'll continue to break down there, and it'll feed any of the microorganisms that are in the garden as well. The other thing I was going to say is that's why a lot of times people have like the stalls for the compost. Is because, like you're saying, the bottom there of your compost is like ready to be used. And so they'll flip the pile from stall to stall. That way, the like kind of stuff that still needs to be broken down is on the bottom, and then you cycle it up to the top. And
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I was thinking, and I'd mentioned to you that I kind of wanted to make a box for my pile, and I was thinking maybe I could go ahead and make 2.
Yeah.
Or maybe even 3, so that I could kind of have that type of a rotation going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I have so much resource here as far as being able to make that type of stuff. I don't even bag my summer clippings right now. You know?
You should dump them over there.
I really wanted to.
Because you can add it to
or at least some of them. Yeah.
You could mulch the trees with that compost too. That'll be really good for the trees.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the trees definitely would.
Thought of that. Yeah.
What they recommend for trees actually is, obviously yours are right now. Well, for those that are listening, his trees are still like 2, 3, maybe 4, pretty young, pretty small.
They'll be 4 this year.
Okay. Yeah. So they say though, like for mulching trees, you want to mulch them from the base of the trunk out to the drip line of the like canopy.
How deep should the mulch be? 2-3 inches?
I think close to the trunk, I would do like 4 inches thick. Well, just because it'll help, block out weeds and block out grass. Yeah. Because grass, will compete with. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely need to get more mulch. There's no doubt about that. I needed that last year already. I was short on it then, but yeah, it's that's definitely something I'll be fetching here directly. So interesting. I will keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But they're starting to get leaves shooting out on them, which means my deer stuff is working.
Yeah.
And I am using the all natural right now. Not the mothball madness. I'm not going nuclear yet. I'm just using that what was it? An egg, a cup of milk, a tablespoon of dish soap and fill in a gallon jug, and fill the rest with water and shake it up and let it sit outside and handle with a biosuit.
Yeah.
Foul, yo. And I don't know how often I would have to apply it, but I'm going out about every 2 weeks tops and just spraying down the fence posts that I have, up around the trees.
Yeah.
Spraying them down real good. Because I don't know if it washes off over a certain amount of time or something.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that I keep those bastards off my trees. And I'll tell you what, they are growing in numbers. I'm gonna have to get a bow and get a bow license or something. Or I don't know if I can shoot them with a gun on my property or not when it's in season. I don't know.
You have to get permission from your neighbor, probably, at least, because you might be a little close.
Well, depending on where I shoot too.
Yeah.
But I saw just this evening. I was shooting at them with the BB gun this evening. That's what I do. With the BB gun. There were no less than half a dozen to 8 of them out in my front yard.
Wow.
And I'm just like, oh, you sons of bitches! I'm gonna.
Dude. You should. Oh man, that'd be great. You could put up a little tree stand, little bow and arrow from up above.
Well, you know what?
Steaks.
Honestly, I just build a little flat on my shed roof.
Yeah.
And I just sit up there. It'd be
like a sniper.
Yeah, it'd be like a little deck, man. I'd get myself a little cooler, so I'd have beverages and lunch. And stuff. I wouldn't even have to get down. I'd just hang out up there and.
I like it.
But they are staying off the trees, which is a big win for me. So
sure.
There's that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, use that recipe if you're having deer problems. Apparently, it seems to be working. So
if they keep at it, I'd imagine, that you're right. Like if there's like a heavy rain or something like that, it might wash some of it off. Or yeah.
I would think so. That over time it would just start to kind of wear off.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and the thing is, I've only mixed this stuff up once. I mixed this stuff up once 3 months ago, maybe now already.
Okay.
And I haven't run out of it yet. So, it doesn't take a whole ton of it.
Yeah.
It lasts a while. And for me to make that, it cost me 25 cents.
And you know and that it's not like harsh chemicals and things like that. So nice peace of mind. Because you've got dogs and cats and a dog and a cat.
Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna rake the leaves off the strawberries Sunday. I think this is the last of the really cold stuff that we're gonna get for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and make that call for myself. I think. Maybe I might do a little bit of looking around and see what they're projecting for the last frost or whatever. But I think we're probably good after this.
Yeah.
So.
Did you get any snow flurries at least? Not laying down, but flurries.
Yeah, we actually got snow. It did, and it actually laid for a few hours.
Oh wow!
But I mean, it just it came down. It was there for a little bit, and then it was gone again. So it really wasn't bad. But it's been cold the last 2 or 3 days, and that's definitely taken a toll. Like on the daffodils. The poor daffodils are like.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like.
Not happy. So, too early. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But the snow was really of no consequence. It's really just been the cold. So.
Yeah, that was an interesting storm because it sort of spanned the entire Northeast and trickled down even into Pennsylvania and below a little bit there, but the cold front, which was it was being pushed back, I guess, by the ocean so much that up here and where we were at, we actually had just rain the whole time. We didn't get any snow at all.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. But you had said that it did get cold this week, though.
It did, and then that evening, it dropped down. Like last night, it was 24 degrees. We had a pretty good freeze. Yeah.
Yeah. Last night it was probably down in the upper teens here, I think.
Wow.
It's supposed to be that way again tonight too.
Yeah.
But then that's it. Tomorrow it's going to be like up around 60, I think, and then I don't see a low below like upper 30s for the next 10 days. So that's why I'm like, I think we might be good.
Turning the corner. Yep.
So yeah. So get the strawberries uncovered, let them start flourishing, and I got to do my trellis work for my grapevine. That'll be next.
Oh yeah.
And
did you finish all the? Were you pruning the? What was it? I thought you were pruning something. Was it anything? I guess maybe not.
Well, I mean, I'm constantly pruning stuff, but specifically, I'm not sure what you would have been talking about.
We had talked about pruning the other week.
Maybe the grapes.
I think I was.
The grapes,
yeah.
They need done like in the dead of winter.
Right.
But I did. I took them down a while ago already. So, yeah,
I think that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. You had mentioned about how they had reached, real far.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They really went. I'll get some pictures of them this year. It's crazy because I'll get a picture of it here soon. I'll get a picture of just the main root.
Oh yeah.
I'll just take a picture like every week or something like that.
There you go.
And we'll watch the progress of it because it's wild. I mean, it goes from being this 3 foot off the ground little stick to this just all encompassing mass.
Yeah. In just one season. That's so crazy.
Yeah. I think you could almost watch it grow at points.
Wow.
It's wild. It's fun. It's fun to watch. Growing stuff is fun.
That'd be a really good one for one of those, almost like a game camera, but something that just takes a picture once every week or once every day or something.
And then you put it into
and
a
speed it up.
lapse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one where you do a video. You're right. You just have a video camera sitting on it, watching it, and then you can do a time lapse video of it growing. You're right. That would be cool to watch.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Good times.
I just wanted to bring this up real quick too, because I don't know if it. I think we definitely talked about this, but it may have been on one of our recorded episodes before we started publishing, and I just thought of it because we were talking about the garden. But that was the time that Wyatt and Miles were hanging out with the neighbors, right? And they were saying that the garden is not doing so hot. And the neighbor, and then they come home and they're like, "Dad, you're supposed to put, compost and fertilizer in."
Yeah. I felt garden shamed. Well, they also came home with a bunch of produce from the neighbor.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He sent over a bunch of peppers and I can't remember what else.
Wow.
And I was just like, I'm such a failure. I can't provide for myself. That was
I just thought it was so funny that you were like, well, I've got. Do you know that tarp that's up there by the garden?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, I'm on it. I've got plans, guys.
Yeah.
That was funny.
So good.
Yeah, too much. Huh. So with all that you've been doing on the farm and stuff, have you had any time for reading any news stories or seeing trending topics lately?
Just kind of a little bit cursory, just on the outskirts a little bit. Yeah, the one thing I saw is that I guess they've unstuck the ship. Is that right?
They did unstuck the ship. Yeah, that's
right. But then
right.
didn't it get stuck again right away or something, and then they got it unstuck again?
It was like, I don't know. They said that it was unstuck, and then they said it got blown back into being stuck, and then they got it back out again. I don't know.
Didn't they say that it was the wind that that blew it and got it stuck to begin with?
In the first place?
I think so.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I didn't watch any reports after it was unstuck. The only report that I actually watched about it, it was pretty early on, but they were like, we don't know. They said that the captain indicated that the whole thing just powered down.
Huh.
Which I guess ultimately that could lead to wind blowing you off course.
Yeah,
but,
I guess so.
You know, that was what they were hinting at early on. So yeah. I don't know if they changed any of that or not.
And then I just had seen that another boat got stuck in the UK, I guess, or something like that.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
In some little canal. I don't think it was like, obviously some large, global, what do you call those? Trade route, a trade route, right? But some other boat got stuck again. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think. I'm trying to think if there's anything real big. I know that there's the jab passport that's being proposed a bit.
Well, it's not just being proposed a bit. They're rolling it out in New York State.
That's right.
And I guess that they're making. I haven't read about it or anything yet, but I guess that they're making it somewhat of a requirement, or they're trying to, for businesses and stuff. To go along with that, there's legislation in the New York Assembly right now. It's terrifying. It grants the New York State government the authority to detain you for like up to 60 days if you are suspected that you could be a biological terrorist, I guess, is what you could be called.
I recall that. And then the language is very vague. It's just like, if you are, like, if you could potentially be considered a threat.
Yeah.
It's like, potentially considered, possibly.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And so that's scary. People would say, well, I mean, it's scary. I'm not scared of these things. I'm annoyed with them. That's more where I come from. I'm annoyed, and I wish they'd just either get on with it or let us get back to being normal. Like, I kind of feel like I'm in purgatory.
Right.
I either want to move forward with being off the grid and stuff, or I want to just get back to what we were doing before.
Right, yeah.
And still work to be off the grid and stuff.
Right.
But I just feel like there's just kind of this weird dance going on right now. But so people would say, well, that's just New York State. It's not a big deal. You don't live in New York. Who cares? Okay, fair enough. Well, there's news stories all over the place, and you can search it for yourself. And as a matter of fact, I got into a few Twitter arguments this week over stuff like this, and people are just lazy. This person was like, well, where did you hear anything like that? I'm like, just
Google.
Have you used a browser? Like, is Twitter the only thing that you know how to get on the internet with? Yeah, and you can just pull up news stories. And so the Biden administration is working closely with businesses and people to develop guidelines for these types of applications and requirements. And apparently that immediately garnered a lot of blowback. Well, no, what they said initially, the stories initially were that the Biden administration is creating these things, right? And that generated a ton of blowback.
Right.
Well, then they came out and said, "Oh, guys, come on, man, come on. We're not making these things. We're working with people to develop guidelines.
It's going to be privately enforced."
Yeah. Well, and funny enough, there are a lot of libertarians that really started jumping off on this. Dave Smith just started flipping out. He's like, this is insane. I can't believe we're even talking about this right now.
Yeah.
But then there are other libertarians that are like, it's private businesses, man. They can do what they want, man. It's private business. And it's like, what?
Dude.
there's no demarcation anymore sometimes,
Well,
right?
especially because what drives me so crazy is a lot of times when people say they're private businesses, the problem is that they are actively working with the government to
Yeah.
do these things. So, I mean, they are essentially acting as an accomplice to the government.
Yeah.
So, is that a private
That's
company
fair.
really then? I mean, that's not the intention of, oh, I'm a private company, I can do what I want, you know?
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah, and in some cases, and in a lot of cases, these companies, because some of these companies that they would say that they're working with to develop guidelines and stuff are in fact companies that will be carrying out the processing of the data, the collecting of the data, all of that.
Yeah.
These are companies that are probably going to be getting paid in some fashion at some point with our tax dollars.
Right.
That's
That's
but then they'll say,
100%.
well, it's private industry, it's private. Well, yeah, kind of, I guess. Um, it's shady at best.
Yeah.
But one of the really interesting aspects of this is in New York specifically, and the one story that I skimmed said that this company that so the thing is called the Excelsior Pass, first of all, which I thought was a troll. The first time I saw somebody call it that. I don't know how familiar you are with South Park.
No, I'm not.
South Park did an episode once upon a time, many years ago, where they were making fun of Al Gore, and Al Gore is like this. He's able to fly. He has flying abilities, right?
Oh, nice.
And he's trying to save the world from climate change and all that fun stuff. But he's really, well, what he's really doing is neither here nor there. What he does is like he'll rush into a place and he'll offer a solution, and then before he leaves, he goes, Excelsior, and he speed off.
Takes off.
So like when I saw somebody call this thing the Excelsior Pass, I thought it was a joke, but apparently it's not. It's the Excelsior Pass. The company that is doing this says that they are currently in talks with most states. That's a quote from the article, and I would assume that the federal government is working with them. But at any rate, one of the main companies behind the databases and stuff for all of this is IBM.
I recall, actually. Yep.
Who has a very controversial history with Nazi Germany. Now, what I read today about it, because I wanted to do a little bit of research for myself, and I didn't do a lot. I'm not going to lie. I only read like one article about it. But what it said was that this one guy wrote a book about this whole situation in like 2001 with IBM having worked so closely with them. And indeed, there's logs, I guess, showing that the president and CEO of IBM at the time did in fact meet with Hitler. Wow. on more than a few occasions, like for dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this guy says that IBM effectively was the gears behind the whole machine.
Yeah.
That they had a punch card system that they designed.
Exactly.
That everything was running on, and IBM was literally keeping the trains on time. Yep. You know?
Literally, yeah. Yeah.
Literally. So it's known, obviously, that there were a lot of fellows from that era in Germany that came over here and continued their work for the good guys in America. And of course, they just did a complete about face, and they're wonderful people. I don't question it at all. And so it's just interesting that company now is running a health passport thing, which, by the way, health passports were a thing in Nazi Germany. It's a fact. You can look it up. Go ahead.
Oh, definitely.
Before Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia also had health passports. So I just cannot. I just cannot believe that for all the Nazi talk for the last 4 years that we've heard, that nobody is a little more concerned about stuff like this.
That's a great point. Because, with all the, accusations being thrown around about who's a Nazi and who's not a Nazi, and that is very interesting. If anyone was actually watching some of those, World War II documentaries on Netflix and whatever, if you want to pay attention, you can follow sort of some scary similar trajectories, and I think that's why it's important to kind of discuss these things and to understand where things were at before. But yeah, IBM, they effectively were like contact tracers, for the Nazis. I mean, they knew where the people were going, who was going where. I just want to recommend to anyone that is looking for a good movie. There's a movie called Good. The title of it is just Good.
I think I've heard of this.
It's
I've never seen it,
excellent.
but I think I've heard it.
It's got Viggo Mortensen. I can't remember which that is. But yeah, Viggo, he's a really good actor. I like a lot of the films that he's in. And he does a great job. But the plot line is essentially a gentleman, a university professor in Nazi Germany, in 1930s. And it's just kind of the story of a gentleman that didn't really want to be a part of anything crazy or, nationalistic and all this stuff. He just was kind of trying to be a family man and make his way through life. And it's kind of the story about him and one of his friends who was a Jew, and just kind of how they got wrapped up in, things in a way. How people who were otherwise, could have been looked at as very normal and good were, joining the Nazi Party and then being called out to the, to the streets during potential rioting and stuff to keep the peace is what they were being told they were meant to do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because, one of the Alinsky rules for radicals is accuse them of that which you are guilty of, right? Isn't that one of them?
It is.
It's kind of interesting that people have been running around calling other people Nazis for the last 4 years, and now there's all this weird crap happening. I also thought that it was really ironic. I got a really good chuckle. People like to say, oh, it's hiding in plain sight. And Owen has pointed out in the past, well, it's just in plain sight.
It's not hiding.
It's not hiding. It's just in plain sight. You're an idiot. That's the problem. I think it's astonishingly hilarious knowing that about IBM, that they marketed themselves for the longest time in the United States as the solutions company. And I told Lena this evening, I said, maybe they should have called it the solution company.
What's their AI called?
What is their AI called? They have a specific name for it.
Yeah, it's got a single name, just one, like a single name. Like
that's a good question.
Because there's something with that too, I believe.
Is there really?
I think so.
Interesting.
What is it?
I can't remember what. We can look that up real quick.
Yeah.
I just thought that was really funny though. The solutions company.
That is pretty fascinating, huh?
To me, it's like
Watson.
Watson, yeah, that's what it's called. Watson. What's around dear Watson's name?
Boy, it's been a long time since It had something to do with the Nazi history, if I recall,
really?
As well. Yeah, I think so. It had some other connection back in there, like a gentleman that worked either for them or I'm sort of looking things up at the same time here, but I'm Yeah, the
Yeah.
Solutions Company. The
I
Solutions
just
Company. Good
I'm
grief.
like, could it be any more in your
Oh,
face?
here we go.
That's
Here we go. So it was IBM chair and CEO Thomas Watson who had visited the Third Reich multiple times and dined with Hitler.
there it is. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting that they would name it Watson.
After the CEO who was dining with Hitler.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Well, it, people have talked about this before, that the whole thing smells of a eugenics program. And I saw Tim Pool mention today for the first time. Finally, somebody's saying it. That's a little more mainstream, a little more
Mm,
well known. He just tweeted, "I think it's really weird to me how they want people that aren't white to get the shot first." And he's right. Like, those are the
yeah.
people that they're rushing to the front of the line. They're the disenfranchised. We got to save these people. We got to help them.
Yeah.
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 I don't know, man. I don't know. I
And how?
we talked we talked about the Tuskegee experiments.
Yeah.
I saw a video today of somebody, I don't know where it was somewhere in America. It was a group of black men, and this guy's like pitched up on a street corner, and he's like, he spit out a fact about these stabs have killed more in the first few weeks than the Tuskegee experiments killed on the whole, or something like that. I can't remember, but he was just like, if you're going to force us to take this, we take that as a declaration of war. He's
Mm,
like, we're not going to stand for this. So there are some people out
yeah.
there, I guess, that are awake. I think there's a lot of people out there that are really starting to wake up.
I think this is kind of line drawing times. Really,
It
right?
definitely is. It
It's
definitely is. The
yeah.
vaccine pass, the passport is my line. I will not. I'm almost at the point of querying local businesses as to whether or not they would be participating in something
Well,
like that.
did you see the wellness signia or something? Was it the well
Oh,
health the well health signia or
somebody,
something?
somebody just shoot me right in the face. Jennifer
Dude.
Lopez and
Yeah.
Lady Gaga and Robert De Niro and the whole lot of them, just awful, awful stuff.
Yeah.
What awful people.
And you think it's so funny how like all these same people will talk about racial inequality and all this stuff and all this thing, but in terms of like if you really want to think about the classes in this country, are poor white people, black people, any color going to be able to just easily have this passport and go into all these well checked buildings? Because if you look at that ad that they had, every single one of those buildings that they were showing is like a ritzy, super nice place. I mean, this is like the elite of the elite,
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, that's something that I tweeted earlier this week too. I said, hey, if these things are going to be mandatory, what are we going to do with the poor Black and Latino folks that don't know how to get online, to get in line, to get the
Right.
shot, much less get a passport?
How are they going to get an ID? They could never get an
Yeah,
ID. They don't know where to
I
get an
mean,
ID.
these idiots don't know how to read. I mean, how could they possibly do any of this other stuff? That's why I'm here, to help them.
Oh man,
To
I
just
hope that
tape on
I
my
hope
back.
that I hope that President Biden is going to be leading the rollout of all this stuff, because I would really feel better, safer if I heard him speaking about it. You
Yeah,
know,
well, I'm sure he'll have a press conference about it any day now. I'm sure he'll be out there answering questions and things of that nature.
yeah,
Um, to what you were saying earlier with that movie, though, I had an interesting thought earlier this week, because it's something that I've been harping on for a while now. Is that, I love our country because our system of government and the way that the corporations are structured and everything, and the industries, it makes so that nobody bad could ever get to the top of anywhere ever. It's awesome like that.
yeah,
Uh, and Lena was reading a story earlier this week about there's all this transgender stuff going on now where they want to allow trans athletes to participate regardless of how they were born biologically. For example, in Connecticut right now, I think there are trans women hold like 15 women's state records right now or something like that.
Yeah.
And so there are some people that are trying to put an end to this stuff, saying, hey, this is insane. People can be trans if they want, but you got to compete as you were biologically born.
Sure. Yeah.
So there was an article and there's a scientist who's talking about, well, we can't possibly know somebody's gender when they're born. It's just impossible to know their gender when they're born, and explaining all this different stuff about how, well, yeah, they say testosterone helps enhance performance and this, but there's really no hard evidence and blah, blah. I mean, this guy's saying some really wild stuff. And you might think to yourself, well, that's just one obscure scientist. Who cares? This guy is working with the IOC, which for y'all not hip with your acronyms is the International Olympic Committee, to try and set standards and persuade them to allow, trans people to participate in the Olympics as they identify. So obviously this guy has some serious pull around the world.
Yeah.
How does somebody like this get there? And we'll set that aside. And now I'm going to ask you, do you really think that type of insanity is going to be restricted to one discipline of capital S science? Right? Do you think it's possible that maybe some quacks and some psychos in some other disciplines are also getting a lot of play and a lot of publicity and a lot of authority?
I was just going to say, it's the authority, right? When you have the expert, well, I could never speak. You're the authoritative source because you're the expert. I don't know. I could never even fathom to having a hypothesis, right?
I don't understand what germuses are. I don't know how that stuff works. I don't know what illness is.
Yeah, you need 8 years in a socialist institution before you can ever. Yeah, exactly. Before you could ever understand.
Yeah, it's and that's so prevalent. You see that all the time. Well, you're not a doctor. You're not an epidemiologist. You're not a scientist. How would you possibly know? Well, yeah, I guess you're right. How could I possibly know anything about anything? Could you please tie my shoes for me? Like, it's maddening.
Yeah.
And
but you're totally right. It's like if if you see something like, well, the DMV is like the classic one that everyone always uses, right? Like if you think that you should have government, like organizing and controlling social programs, like look at the DMV, like, right? It's like,
yeah.
and this, but you can do that with all sorts of things, as you say. If you're looking at the science of gender and biology, I mean, come on, what's going on, people? Like that whole field is in complete chaos, and to think that that's not slipping into other sciences is crazy. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that science is a real thing. And it's just, I thought that thread, you shared a thread with us the other day, and that was a great thread. It kind of highlighted the difference between pseudoscience and real science, and was really good at sort of showing that right now we're seeing a lot of pseudoscience.
Yeah. And that thread also highlighted how easy it is for people to be swayed and to be sucked into stuff, and
that our authoritative sources will just as easily put all their backings, all their chips behind things that we find out later are really not right.
And I had this thought today, which really I thought was kind of profound, is that I see on Twitter all the time people saying, well, people will be like, how much money would it take for you to tap dance for the man? Would you tap dance for the man for $50 million? And somebody's like, man, I'll do a whole ballet for $50 million. I'll tap dance for the man. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're the same person that's going to look at me nuts when I tell you that somebody's playing you, but you're saying that you'd play somebody for the right amount.
Right.
So you're already telling me that humans are capable of this type of stuff, that you would be willing to sell people out for $50 million. So why do you think it's so insane that somebody else would be able to do it?
Or that they're willing to sell themselves out for $50 million too. And that's basically what this is that it's a big experiment to see how much is everyone willing to sell themselves out for. What do we got to do? Is it a month of no work? Okay, no, it's got to be a year of no work. America is pretty independent and headstrong, so we got to lock them down for more than a year even. Now we got to go for a year and a half, 2 years, right? How much are the people going to take before they snap, right?
Yeah, well, Event 201 would say 18 months, 12 to 18 months.
We're almost there.
We're approaching it, and something that I follow some numerology folks on the Twitter. I think that numerology is interesting. I don't know how much you know about it. Gematria.
I know a lot. Well, I know I know a lot about the Egyptian kind of numerology stuff.
Kabbalah, is it Kabbalah? Is that what they call it? Kabbalic practice. But it's really interesting stuff. There's a lot of numbers that if you do the right, dividing the letters and counting and stuff, it does add up. They would point out that 6 months from or 18 months rather from 3/20/20 or whenever this all jumped off,
15 days
would be like 752 days or something like that, almost on the dot to the anniversary of 9/11.
Huh.
And if you think about it, indeed, 18 months from March would be September. So, and people that believe in that type of stuff would tell you that 9/11 was done, it was coordinated and it was done on 9/11 because 9 and 11 are some of these numbers that are very common in these ritualistic type of things and things of that nature. And it's one of those things that's kind of like physics to me, where I'm like, when you explain it to me, I'm like, yeah, dude, I totally get it. That makes a lot of sense. And then tomorrow I'm like, I don't know what the hell that meant. I can't explain that. I remember it kind of made sense, but I can't explain that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the numerology stuff is for me.
I do think that there's something with I had considered bringing up today, although we don't have time here for the stream. But there was a study, done with water and snowflakes and speaking to the water and then having it freeze, and different words that are said to the water, freeze different forms of a snowflake. And that's kind of what I was going to sort of get into, was sort of the nature of reality in different forms and how everything exists in different phases, in different forms, and that it shifts through different forms, like water being either a liquid, gas, or solid. Right?
Trinity. It's a trinity.
And numbers, right? 3 and all that stuff. But it's so fascinating that form and numbers are, linked together. And when we say about like body and mind, body and spirit, right, are linked together. I oftentimes think about how our form in our physical way, kind of relates to our form in our spiritual sense as well. So anyway, I thought that was fascinating with the numerology, that really does tie directly to, form and shape and form of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, well, and it certainly would be a way of encoding messaging if indeed that type of thing is going on, where people are trying to signal to other people uh, on some level. And again, I don't know
Yeah.
how any of that would work. I'm not saying it's going on. I just like to think about it, and hey, man, it's possible. And there's some weird stuff going on. Look into it.
Yeah.
It's fun to look into. Take a night off the Netflix and look into gematria.
There you
See
go.
what's up.
Look
I'm
up the
telling you,
Egyptians,
it's fun.
guys.
It's fun.
They did so much stuff with that, and it's almost undeniable because, like, for instance, with the Great Pyramid, where they have it facing true north to like fractions of a degree. Unbelievable that each side of the pyramid then is like perfectly perpendicular to each other side, and there's a lot of other numerology then, or like you were saying, communication with numbers, where if you know the math, you can then any person, regardless of their language, can discover that message, because math is transcends language. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Going back to your talking about the water stuff, which I've heard of that experiment before. It's really, really fascinating stuff.
yeah,
People should look into that type of stuff. Everything that you do is energy, and it matters. It really does. It sounds kooky and new agey and whatever you want to call it, but there is definitely something to it, because like you said, that study shows that when you speak to water, it changes the composition of it and everything.
yeah.
So the Secrets of Saturn podcast was on this past Wednesday. Crow 777 and those folks. Always an interesting podcast with those folks. I enjoy that one quite a bit. They were talking about how somebody had mentioned, because they brought up, ironically, that same study and that
Oh, wow.
thing we were just talking about. Yeah. And they said that somebody mentioned, well, hey, what if you could study the composition and stuff enough to see how it changes when you say certain things to it, that
Mhm.
you could speak to your water, encode a message in it, freeze the water, and then somehow get that frozen water to somebody else who could then decode the message.
Yeah. Huh.
Just something interesting. I don't
Well,
know if it's possible.
I would say it is, because just from the basic idea of they have this technology where you put your head against a window, and they can have vibrations on the window transmit into your brain words for an advertisement. I don't know if you've ever seen that technology. That, like, if you're riding on like a shuttle bus and you like lean your head against the window to go to take a little nap, you'll just suddenly all of a sudden hear, "Hey there, how you doing? Are you feeling tired? Do you need a boost?" Like that.
That's weird. Wow. I did not know that. I've not heard of that before. That's pretty
And
interesting.
and the same with, I mean, even just like all sound, it's just sound waves,
Right.
that you have a receiver and then an amplifier that changes that. So no, that's a cool thought.
Huh.
Huh,
Yeah.
water.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. That what you were just mentioning there. It's funny because on the Secrets of Saturn podcast, they were talking about they talked a lot about transhumanism also, which I know you're keen on researching. What they were talking about, is it possible to totally put a person into a bot, right? And ultimately, the dilemma that I've always come across when thinking about it, that they ultimately came to as well, is, yeah, I think you can probably make a like a file system composite, if you will, of a person. But and you can maybe make the bot to where it can run artificial intelligence enough to process through that file system and carry out particular actions, right? Based
Gotcha.
on the download. But there's another part of me as a person that is separate from that file system.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get that into the bot.
I agree.
That's how I see it. I don't think that you can give it sentience, if that's the right word. But I don't think you can give it consciousness, if you will. Right? Is there a difference between the two? Would you agree?
I think so, because in terms of like animals, right? We think of, I guess technically they would use those words as
kind of interchangeable,
as
almost.
Synonymous. I think, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but you see what I mean by trying to use this. I'm trying to delineate between, and the way that they defined it was, we've been told for so long now that our bodies work like a robot and that our minds work like a computer.
Right.
And they're saying that basically that's really not what's going on exactly at all.
I agree.
It's pretty different.
And not only that, but that the other thing is that, for instance, think of I'm gonna branch off a little bit here. If there's a lot of studies of people that take psychedelics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you consume these things, it actively creates new neural pathways in your brain. So, neurons fire and you create a connection. That connection builds over time as you do that action more and more. That connection strengthens. And so, these studies that are taking place are for people that have these addictive pathways or traumatic experiences that they, PTSD they have after the experience. And so that pathway is ingrained in them that they can't break out of it, right? And so these psychedelics allow them to create brand new connections. And then, it allows them to sort of be able to deal with the trauma that they have in other ways. And so my mind, the reason I brought that up is because I think of it as, the computer is like you said, it needs the filing cabinet firsthand, right? Like you need to give it the hardware, the information, and even if it can do some machine learning, I don't know, there's something just a little bit disconnected that there's no creation there, really.
Exactly. I was just going to say, let me put together what you're trying to bring across a little more succinctly. I think I can help you out. So if you were to take somebody who has suffered that trauma and has that PTSD and you took their download, right? You just took that file system right out, all the filing, and you plopped it into a bot, and the bot had artificial intelligence and all of that. That bot would not be able to bridge those gaps and create those new pathways and create that new filing within there. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I that's sort of what I'm thinking. Yeah, at least not in the same way. That the type of pathways that are created when you do the psychedelics, at least from the studies that they are doing, it indicates it's kind of a very unique sort of thing that's occurring. It's not that, I don't know how to really describe it, but it's not, it's organic, but it's also not really being done intentionally necessarily. Things are like, because our bodies and our brains right now are sort of filtering out all sorts of data and information so that we can deal with the reality or deal with the information that we need to in order to interact with the physical world. But when you take these psychedelics, a lot of times it turns off those parts of your brain which are filtering, certain data points. Okay. And so now suddenly you're being flooded with new data and your brain is making all these new pathways because you're perceiving new data. And so, that's just what I think, that the robot, is much learning as it can do, as much vast amounts of memory that it can have to store information. It doesn't have that ability to, like, I don't know, just have pure access to, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say there.
No,
Yeah.
it's because it's really hard to talk about. People would flip out about this, but what you're talking about is really how humans are kind of godlike. I think, because in a sense you're creating something from nothing. When you're creating these things in your head, and these traumas and how they affect you, you're in control of that to a degree, or at least your body is in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that happens that can't be replicated by a bot. A bot can't create something from nothing. It would have to be able to go out on the internet and research PTSD and trauma, and maybe figure out some way to try and fix the file system so that it didn't have this, or I guess the other thing about it too, though, is that a bot probably just straight up wouldn't even care about the PTSD, because that's a particular thing that wouldn't transfer. Like,
Right.
that's kind of almost outside of the file system. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of one of those things that's kind of outside of it.
Well, even
Um,
just that same thing of, like, just emotions, right, in general. Like, when you say
yeah, that's
love,
what I was gonna
like,
say. It's an emotion.
well,
Yeah,
and just the words themselves, like love. Like, when I say, like, I love you, Jeremy, there's that word means something to me. It means something to you, but what it means is like a combination of all the experiences, really, that I've had throughout
yeah,
my whole life, and what I'd use to define love by. And
yeah,
love is such a complex thing. It's obviously there's love that you have for someone that you're intimate with, but then there's also love that you have for a brother, for a mother, for a father, and all that sort of thing too. And
yeah.
I was going to ask, do they know how, like, life is created? Like, when the sperm goes into the egg, do they really understand, like, what it is that spurs the new thing that is generated from that?
I don't I don't know that they do. I don't
I'm
know. I'd have to
curious.
look that up. Because I think that
Yeah.
people would say ultimately it's a divine spark,
Right.
right? Divine spark.
And the reason I mention that is because, in a way, I feel like a lot of things that are created have that spark in them. Then that even, like, a neural pathway, like, sort of being ignited and connecting. It's almost, a lot of people that describe coming up with great ideas and coming up with all kinds of, like, really revolutionary things. They describe it almost as
Came to
that
me.
it came to me, and or that I had to, like, remove myself from the idea. That the only way to actually be able to achieve, the vision that I had, was to remove myself from it as much as possible,
Yeah,
right? So that it
yeah,
can actually come to fruition. And so, in many ways, it almost, like you're saying, it almost is. My wife has described. Yeah, we gotta clip this. My wife has described a river of consciousness that we all have access to and that we can tap into, and that
yeah,
river is essentially God, and that we all have, sort of like a access to
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Well, and I think that I couldn't agree more with that idea, because that feeds into the energy concept too, right? If
Mm.
you're feeding positive energy out there, it should hopefully be radiating with other people, and you're feeding that
Mm.
battery, you know,
Yeah.
and it's kind of, we're all connected on that energy level. Yeah, for sure. Um, no, that's, yeah, interesting stuff for sure.
Definitely.
Um, I feel like there's
Food
some
for
other thing I
thought for
wanted
the
to.
rest of the weekend.
Indeed, for the rest of the Easter weekend. Um, You know, Jesus died for your sins so you can be gluttonous this weekend. Good stuff.
Go out and stuff yourself face with ham and chicken and
chocolate and peanut butter.
yeah.
Oh man. So anyway, I think it's time for us to wrap this one up. But thanks for joining us. Find us, like us, subscribe, share it, tell a friend, hit thumbs up, hit thumbs down, give us some feedback. You can find me on Twitter. You can find Jordan on the farm. And until next time, Jordan, I love you, man, and we'll be in touch.
Likewise. Love you, Jeremy. Talk to you later. Bye,
Peace out,
everybody.
everybody.